You know, I realized that I saw two spooky bear movies this year, Five Nights at Freddy's and Cocaine Bear. I liked them both just about the same. Wasn't really a fan of Cocaine Bear. Mike Schmidt is a financially struggling man on the verge of losing custody of his little sister to their evil aunt, but he's given a lifeline in the form of a job as a night guard at a dilapidated pizzeria called Freddy Fazbear's. As the nights go on, he discovers that the animatronic characters are possessed. They're able to walk around freely, and that their possessions are connected to a series of murders that occurred at the restaurant years prior. Can Mike weave his own troubled past through the terror of the present? Or will things come to a brutal, grisly end on the fifth night? People were dogpiling on IGN for their review criticizing the movie, saying that it had too much plot. Oh, what do they expect? It's a FNaF movie. Do they know nothing about the game's narrative? Well, let me tell you what A.A. Dowd actually meant. The games have too much plot in the sense that the narrative is a big ball of yarn that players have to unravel. It's like a puzzle. The movie has too much plot in the sense that there is too much going on at its own expense. Much of the film's focus is on the Mike dream/tragic background storyline. The mystery of William Afton and the murders is kind of in the background, competing with the superfluous Vanessa storyline and the custody battle/Abby storyline. Relating to this, it's also a tonal mess. Between the melodrama of the human characters and the horror of the pizzeria, I felt like I was watching two different movies competing with each other. Which makes sense considering how many screenplay drafts they allegedly went through. For comparison, a horror movie that more deftly blended comedy, drama, and horror was It Chapter 1. And that's because everything complemented each other and veered towards the same goal. With the Spooky Bear movie, there's the custody battle, the Mike tragic backstory, the dead kids, the Vanessa/William Afton dynamic. Oh yeah, Vanessa is William Afton's daughter in this movie. Interesting. Actually, no, it's not interesting. It's just, oh, Vanessa. I recognize that name from the games. The comedy worked at times. I think my favorite character was the lawyer. I don't think he was acting. Guy legitimately looks like he doesn't know what FNaF is and doesn't know what set he's on. It was great. On the other hand, you have gags like that Balloon Boy figurine that just kept showing up and jump scaring Mike out of nowhere. Hilarious, I guess. And it shows up in an end credits joke, which is probably the most impotent end credits joke in the history of cinema. Main characters, Josh Hutcherson as Mike Schmidt, he did fine. Vanessa, completely superfluous up until the shoehorned climax. I think her character and the babysitter character Max should have been combined into one. Matthew Lillard as William Afton was having fun. Although he appears for only like 5 minutes and his cameo as Spring Bonnie at the end was just a waste. It was just set up for the next movie. Again, the Afton murder side of the story should have been the focus of the movie. I've been largely critical thus far, so what are some things that I liked? Well, the movie's biggest strength is its production design. The music is great, the scenery and ambience are spot on, and the practical effects just perfect. The animatronics themselves look great. They move and act and just mesh exactly as I'd hoped for. Seriously, big freaking kudos to the folks at Jim Henson's Creature Shop. It would have been so easy to CGI them or cheap out on their designs, but no, they are fully there and they just look awesome. I did like the dynamic between Mike and Abby, and I really liked the incorporation of the themes of artwork and memory and how Abby's drawings could influence the spirits. It reminded me of The Fourth Closet, and I mean that in a good way because The Fourth Closet had some genuinely well done moments, specifically the scene where Carlton was trying to communicate with the dead kids and let them know who really killed them. It was one of those above and beyond things that told me the filmmakers actually tried, and I appreciate that. Rapid fire list of things I want to address. Go. Matt Pat cameo. Boo! Get off the set. I wanted to kill myself after seeing that. The bite scene. I was fucking flabbergasted. Instead of lobotomizing Max, Freddy just went and freaking Darth Mauled her. It was hilarious, but also completely confounding. Like, you had the setup, but but then you just went and said, nope, fuck you. I always come back. That line just made no sense in context of the movie, and for those who do know the context, it was just tacky. The gore, a few technically effective moments like the aforementioned bite, but the amount of times they cut away from the actual violence went from artistic to deliberate, and it started to annoy me. Oh, reimagining security breach guy wants senseless violence in the FNaF movie. Yeah, violence is fun. Come on, guys, let's have some fun.
Why the need for so much gruesome, graphic violence? Why not let us imagine
Because it's so much fun, Chan. Get it?
The saw trap thing. I don't get it. What was the point of it? Who built it? What does it pay off to? Stupid. The fort building scene. Movie went full goofball right there. The tonal shift was a very jarring slap in the face, but after sleeping on it, it didn't bother me as much. I guess it works in context of the story they were trying to tell, so meh. The Ella doll from 1:35 a.m. makes a cameo as a Springlock suit. Yeah. Good for you, movie. So that's my thoughts about this film. There's clearly effort and passion put into it, which I appreciate. There are individual things that I liked, but the overall presentation was not a good one. The story and tone were a mess, the characters and comedy were a mixed bag. I am glad I saw it though, and maybe I'll see it one more time, just for the heck of it. I give it 5 nights out of 10. Now let's talk about the actual interesting thing about this movie, and that's the critical reception. To nobody's surprise, critics just lambasted this film, and Reddit is experiencing an epidemic of copium overdose as a result. And you love to see it. So here's my interpretation. Firstly, the actual tomato meter. Currently, as of recording, it's sitting at 25%. But remember, that's not the average score that critics gave the movie. That's the number of critics who gave what Rotten Tomatoes deems a positive review. If you want a better gauge of critical reception, look at the average rating. Not good, but definitely not a 25%. Secondly, it's very likely that the problems I had with the film as a movie lover factored into said critical reception. As I said in my book reviews, movies should be able to stand on their own without relying on their IP as a crutch. The mere inclusion of an IP that I like in a cinematic experience should not excuse the legitimate flaws that cinematic experience has. This movie has legitimate flaws that kept me from fully enjoying it. With as oversaturated as FNaF is in real life, it's likely that critics were expecting something amazing enough to justify said oversaturation, and well, they didn't get it. Video game adaptations should at least try to appeal to both fans and general audiences. It's not the critics' fault that they didn't understand this made-for-the-fans movie. More temperance and tact would have carried this movie much further with the critics, and guess what? The fans still would have come out to watch it and still would have enjoyed it. And yes, as someone who already has a pretty big mental compendium of FNaF context, this movie made a hell of a lot more sense to me than it would to the average critic. Here's a tough pill to swallow. This movie isn't great. In fact, it's not even good. So consider changing your perspective from it was good to I liked it. Thirdly, and this one really annoys me, amid the cope infecting the FNaF subreddit, one line I constantly saw was, critics have historically trashed horror as a genre. 1. Yes, it is true that some classic horror films were negatively received upon release, only to be positively reevaluated years later. So, who's to say the same thing can't happen to the FNaF movie? Maybe it'll be reevaluated years down the line. Or maybe it won't. Who knows? This is called unfalsifiability, referring to an argument that cannot be proven false. Oh, if it can't be proven false, that must mean it's true, right? No. The absence of falseness does not indicate the presence of truth. This isn't an argument, this is a logical fallacy. It's a rhetorical cushion to cast doubt and stymie conversation. Don't buy into unfalsifiability. It's one hell of a drug, too. I would argue that these movies were negatively received when they came out because at the time they were narrative and technical anomalies. As a genre, horror was still finding its roots, and these filmmakers were absolute visionaries in presenting audiences with things they hadn't seen before. And as the genre evolved, these films would come to inspire future works and be retroactively seen as genius. I'm sorry, the FNaF movie is not The Shining, both in terms of its technicality and its placement in the history of horror as a genre. So in conclusion, this argument isn't backed by any actual knowledge of the genre or logical integrity. It's just another side effect of copium overdose. It's pouring across our borders. It's corrupting our youth. Ah! But of course, if you've learned one thing from this review, it's this. Don't take my word for it. Go out and see the movie for yourself. Who knows? You might find some things that you too enjoy. And I will say this. It is better than the Mario movie. Take care. See you all next time.